Get out now, or I séchez late, or I'm calling the sheriff to arrest you for trespassing.
I'm standing in the doorway of the remote mountain A-frame I bought 3 months ago, deed in hand, truck packed with tools, ready to turn this abandoned cabin into my dream retreat. Instead, a Karen in an apron is flipping pancakes in my kitchen, snapping,
This is OLR family cabin since the 80s, sweetie. Yo, you're trespassing.
Bacon sizzles, coffee brews, kids laugh upstairs. Family photos plaster the walls I plan to renovate. Bikes clutter the porch. Herbs grow where my workshop was supposed to be.
This is my property.
She waves her spatula.
Good luck proving that up here, honey.
Blood boiling. This family's turned my renovation into their nightmare. What would you do? Call cops? Confront? Drop your state below. Which ones protect owners in 2026? Florida/Texas fast justice? California still chaos? Comment your take plus state now. Let's expose the real squatter battles. Let me rewind this nightmare and explain how I walked straight into Karen hell. I'm Jake Morrison, 34, Phoenix electrician who spent 3 years eating ramen and working double overtime after my divorce. My ex took the house, the dog, and half my sanity, left me with $50,000 and a burning need to disappear somewhere lawyers don't vacation. This A-frame popped up online. 1970s mountain isolation, 2.5 acres, estate sale. Owner died, no family. The photos showed cobwebs thick as curtains, mouse droppings decorating the counters, and that beautiful neglected vibe that screams, fixer-upper gold mine. Perfect for a guy who speaks fluent power tool and needs serious alone time. I did everything by the book. Inspection, title search, proper escrow. The estate attorney seemed legit. Tired old guy drowning in paperwork who just wanted these abandoned properties off his desk. The sweet smell of pine sap and possibility filled my truck as I drove away with signed papers 3 months ago. Finally, something that belonged to me. Fast forward to today's kitchen ambush and meet the Kelsworth crime family. Brenda, 52, former HOA dictator who got mysteriously retired after some embezzlement whispers. Picture every entitled suburban mom who demands to speak to managers, except she's traded her minivan for flannel and thinks mountain living makes her authentic. The woman radiates that special Karen energy that could sour milk at 50 yards. Dale, 48, unemployed contractor with the dead-eyed stare of a man whose dreams died somewhere around his 3rd DUI. He's got that bitter mountain man cosplay going, beard, flannel, truck held together with duct tape and rage. You know the type, blames outsiders for every personal failure. Trevor, 17, their charming offspring who got kicked out of school for anger management issues. Kid's got dead shark eyes and the kind of entitled smirk that makes you understand why some animals eat their young. Plus mystery kids upstairs. Apparently this family breeds faster than they work. Brenda's playing victim with Academy Award commitment. My precious Uncle Harold promised us this cabin in 1995. We've been the caretakers, the guardians of family legacy. She's waving this crumpled notebook paper like it's the Magna Carta, complete with crocodile tears. Knowledge nugget. Real adverse possession requires 15+ continuous years of open, notorious occupation against the owner's interest. These people moved in 8 months ago to an already dead owner's property. Legally, they're just trespassers with delusions. The smell of their bacon grease mixed with my rising blood pressure as Dale played good cop. Look, city boy, maybe we work something out. You got cash, we got sweat equity. Mountain partnership, you follow? Partnership. With squatters. In my own house. I need you gone. Today. Brenda's soccer mom smile turned arctic. Oh, sweetie, mountain justice works differently up here. You can't just wave government papers and expect folks to scatter like startled deer. Government papers, she means my legal deed. The crunch of gravel felt like grinding teeth as I retreated to my truck. But here's the kicker. They'd already called the county clerk, filed police reports, positioned themselves as the tragic victims, before I even knew there was a game. At the county office, some overworked bureaucrat confirmed my deed while mentioning concerns about the transaction. The sheriff's deputy was peak helpful. Civil matter, pal. Lawyer up. Lawyer money. Right. After buying a house. But the real kick in the nuts came at Betty's diner. The owner took one look at me. You're that California scammer trying to steal the Kelsworth family cabin, right? California? I'm from Arizona. But Princess Brenda's been busy poisoning the well, telling everyone some out-of-state con artist forged documents to steal their family heritage. The coffee tasted like betrayal mixed with mountain hospitality. Trevor's cackle echoed from the parking lot where he was carving scammer into my tailgate with a key. This wasn't about property anymore. This was psychological warfare, mountain style. Game on, Kelsworths. The Kelsworths weren't content with just stealing my house. They wanted to bury me legally. 3 days after our kitchen showdown, I'm drinking gas station coffee when this guy in a cheap suit walks up. "Jake Morrison, you're being served." He slaps me with papers thick enough to choke a horse and struts away like he just delivered justice. Brenda had hired herself a lawyer, Chip Hendricks, the kind of ambulance chaser who advertises on late-night TV with slogans like, "Injured, we'll get you paid." His cease and desist letter was a masterpiece of legal fiction, claiming the Kelsworths had adverse possession rights and demanding $100,000 for emotional damages and unlawful harassment. Emotional damages. For living in my house. The letter came with a bonus. They'd filed for a restraining order claiming I'd threatened their safety and peace of mind, hearing scheduled in 10 days, during which I was legally banned from my own property pending judicial review. That night, I dove into adverse possession research until my eyes burned from screen glare. Thank God for my ex-brother-in-law's law degree. He'd once explained how squatters could actually steal property if they played their cards right. But these legal geniuses made one tiny mistake. Adverse possession in this state requires 15 years of continuous, open occupation. The Kelsworths moved into my cabin 8 months ago. The original owner died 18 months ago, meaning the property sat empty for 10 months before they showed up. Even better, I remembered reading somewhere that adverse possession can't start against a dead person's estate until probate closes and transfers to new owners, which resets the clock to 0. They'd basically filed a lawsuit admitting to criminal trespassing, the taste of victory coffee mixed with my morning rage as this sank in. Time to hire my own legal pit bull. Maria Santos came recommended by 3 different electricians who'd survived contractor disputes. Sharp as a razor, zero tolerance for bullshit, and the kind of courtroom presence that makes opposing lawyers consider career changes. Her office smelled like leather and confidence. Exactly what I needed. "Let me understand this," Maria said, flipping through Chip's legal fiction. "They're claiming adverse possession rights that started -6 years ago?" Even better, she found public records showing the Kelsworths had never paid a dime in property taxes. Meanwhile, I'd already received my first tax bill and paid it like a responsible human being. But Maria's real detective work uncovered the gold mine. Brenda's beloved Uncle Harold wasn't actually related to her. He was the original owner's distant cousin who'd sold the property in 1987, 8 years before the date on their magical promise letter. So they're claiming inheritance rights from someone who sold the property before they allegedly met him? Maria's grin was predatory. This keeps getting better. The metallic taste of adrenaline filled my mouth as she explained their next move would probably be escalation. Desperate people do desperate things. Watch your back. She was right. I started parking down the road and hiking up through the woods just to check on my property, legally, since the restraining order only prevented confrontation, not observation. The smell of wood smoke and bacon would hit me each morning as I crept through the pine trees, watching their routine unfold. That's when I discovered something that changed everything. The Kelsworths didn't actually live there. Every day at 8 a.m. sharp, Dale's rust bucket truck would rumble up the mountain carrying the whole family. They'd spend the day playing house, then pack up and leave by 4 p.m. like clockwork. I followed them once. Their real address was a rental house in town. According to Betty's Diner Gossip Network, they were 3 months behind on payments. These weren't squatters defending their home. They were commuting to their crime scene like it was a day job. Armed with this intelligence, Maria and I planned our counterattack. We'd document their fake residency, challenge their adverse possession timeline, and expose the whole charade in court. But the Kelsworths weren't done playing games. I woke up to find private property, Kelsworth family land signs hammered into trees all around my acreage. Dale had also started his improvements, specifically tearing out the original stone fireplace I'd planned to restore and replacing it with some Home Depot monstrosity that looked like a Vegas casino threw up. The sound of his sledgehammer echoing through the valley at dawn felt like nails on a chalkboard mixed with personal violation. Brenda, meanwhile, had discovered her calling as a mountain entrepreneur. She started charging hunters $20 for parking permits during deer season, pocketing cash from guys who assumed she owned the place. Her next-door post advertising authentic mountain parking access got 43 responses before I could screenshot it for evidence. But their masterstroke was social media warfare. Brenda posted my license plate number on every local Facebook group with the caption, "Wanted. Information about this scammer trying to steal our family land. Spread the word. Protect your neighbors." And within hours, I had 17 missed calls from strangers wanting to discuss my fraudulent activities. The crunch of broken glass under my boots told me someone had also expressed their opinion through my truck's windshield. Welcome to Mountain Justice. Population: me versus everyone. Brenda Kelsworth had discovered her true calling. Professional victim with a marketing degree. 2 weeks after my truck's windshield met Mountain Justice, I'm scrolling Facebook and find she's organized something called Save Our Mountain Heritage campaign, complete with a logo, some clip art eagle clutching a cabin, and the kind of emotional manipulation that would make televangelists jealous. Her sob story hit every small-town nerve. Outside developers threatening our traditional way of life, fake documents stealing family land, corporate greed destroying mountain values. She'd positioned me as some evil property flipper planning to build luxury Airbnbs and ruin the watershed. The woman had turned property theft into a goddamn crusade. Her petition demanding the county investigate this fraud collected 47 signatures in 3 days. I recognized half the names from Betty's Diner, people who'd never even seen my property, but were ready to lynch the California scammer. Except I'm from Arizona, but facts don't matter when you're riding the mob wave. The smell of diesel exhaust and barbecue smoke filled the mountain air as Brenda hosted her masterstroke. A community protection barbecue right there on my deck. She invited everyone except me, naturally, serving beer and spreading propaganda like it was potato salad. I watched from the tree line as Dale held court, spinning war stories about California investors destroying small towns. His audience, mostly unemployed locals nursing grievances against anyone with a steady paycheck, ate it up like gospel. Trevor worked the crowd too, playing the sympathetic local kid whose family was being terrorized by some psycho with fake papers. The kid had inherited his mother's talent for performance art. But their community theater had one flaw. I'd started documenting everything. Every lie, every manipulation, every illegal activity. My phone storage was maxed out with photos and videos of their daily commute to my property, their unauthorized improvements, and now this public relations circus. During the barbecue, I noticed Dale wasn't just playing victim. He was conducting business. The acrid smell of cigarette smoke mixed with his nervous sweat as he shook hands with 3 different guys, money-changing hands pointing toward my wooded acreage. Something about his shifty body language screamed, transaction. The next morning I found out what he was selling. My neighbor Frank Morrison from the hardware store called with a tip. "Jake, you might want to check your property. Someone's been advertising firewood for sale, claiming it's from the Kelsworth place." Sure enough, Dale had posted Craigslist ads. Premium seasoned oak, cut from family land, $200 per cord, mountain-grown, hand-split quality. The photos showed my trees, specifically the mature oaks I'd planned to build a deck around. I hiked up to find a clear-cut zone behind my cabin. Dale had harvested at least 15 trees, leaving stumps and tire tracks like a logging operation. Based on the Craigslist math and the pile of fresh split wood stacked by his truck, he'd stolen roughly $3,000 worth of timber from my own damn land. The taste of pure fury mixed with pine sap as I stood in what used to be my future backyard oasis. But here's where my contractor brain kicked in. I'd learned years ago to follow the money trail when someone's running a scam. So I tailed Dale to his wood deliveries, staying far enough back to avoid the restraining order, but close enough to document his timber theft empire. 3 stops, 3 cash transactions, 3 satisfied customers buying stolen wood from a guy who doesn't own a single tree. I photographed license plates, recorded conversations, and built a case that would make prosecutors weep with joy. That's when I remembered something Betty mentioned at the diner, how the Kelsworths had been bragging about their insurance money for storm repairs. I'd brushed it off as small-town gossip, but now my electrician instincts were tingling. People who steal timber usually steal everything else, too. One public records search later, I hit the jackpot. The Kelsworths had filed an insurance claim on their property for storm damage repairs. $8,500 for a roof that wasn't actually damaged, collected 3 weeks after they started squatting, using fake lease agreements as proof of occupancy, insurance fraud on property they didn't own. These people weren't just thieves, they were criminal entrepreneurs running a full-scale operation from my mountain retreat. The pieces clicked together like a perfectly wired circuit. Fake residency for adverse possession, timber theft for immediate cash flow, insurance fraud for major payouts, and social media warfare to prevent investigation. The Kelsworths had turned squatting into their family business. Maria Santos nearly choked on her coffee when I walked into her office with 2 banker boxes of evidence. They're not just trespassing, I explained. They're running a criminal enterprise from my property. Her predatory grin was back. Jake, what you've got here isn't a civil dispute anymore. This is organized fraud with federal implications. But even as we planned our legal counterattack, the Kelsworths escalated their psychological warfare. Trevor spray-painted scammer across my truck in letters 3 feet tall. Brenda filed false police reports claiming I'd threatened her at the grocery store, conveniently forgetting I had security footage proving I wasn't even in town that day. The sound of my phone buzzing with anonymous harassment calls became the soundtrack to my mountain nightmare. These people didn't just want my house, they wanted to erase me completely. Too bad they picked the wrong electrician to fuck with. The Kelsworths had officially crossed the line from theft into full-blown environmental terrorism. I knew they were getting desperate when I found my property survey stakes, the ones marking my legal boundaries, pulled up and turned into modern art. Dale had poured maple syrup over each destroyed marker, creating these bizarre ant magnets that looked like some twisted outdoor installation. Each stake had cost me $150 to have professionally placed by a licensed surveyor. Destroying survey markers is a felony in this state, but apparently the Kelsworths thought adding breakfast condiments made it legal. The next morning brought a special delivery, another police visit, this time with Brenda claiming I'd aggressively confronted and threatened her at Morrison's hardware store the previous afternoon. Problem was, I had a timestamp receipt proving I was buying electrical supplies in Phoenix that entire day, 4 hours away. She'd filed a false police report, another felony. These people were collecting charges like they were going for some kind of criminal achievement award. But their real masterstroke was the family reunion from hell. Thanksgiving weekend arrived with the subtle grace of a trailer park invasion. The acrid smell of burnt transmission fluid announced the arrival of Brenda's extended family before I even saw them. Her sister Diane rolled up with her husband Chuck and 3 kids in a rusted RV that leaked something brown onto my driveway. 2 more cousins arrived with ATVs, generators, and enough beer to float a battleship. Suddenly my mountain retreat looked like a refugee camp for the terminally unemployed. They weren't just squatting anymore. They were establishing a compound. Dale started charging family members $50 a week for camping fees, creating documented rental income to strengthen their adverse possession claim. I watched through binoculars as money changed hands and Dale scribbled receipts on fast food napkins. These people had turned criminal trespassing into a multi-generational business model. But the environmental carnage they unleashed made my electrician's soul weep. I'd spent years working construction sites where environmental compliance meant the difference between profit and bankruptcy. The Kelsworths treated my pristine mountain property like their personal toxic waste facility. Dale was emptying motor oil directly into the creek that fed the town's watershed. Not draining it into containers, literally pouring quart bottles straight into flowing water while his nephew Trevor filmed it on TikTok like some redneck comedy show. The rainbow sheen floating downstream looked like a miniature oil spill, complete with dying fish floating belly up. That's when I discovered something that changed everything. They weren't just destroying my property randomly. This was intentional sabotage designed to make the land worthless. I found Dale's notebook tucked under his truck seat during one of their town runs, pages of calculations. Environmental cleanup costs, minimum $50,000. Property value after contamination, maybe $10,000. Insurance payout for accidental damage, $85,000. They were poisoning my land to force me to sell cheap, then planning to collect insurance money for the accidental contamination they'd caused themselves. The taste of pure rage mixed with mountain air as I photographed every page of their criminal business plan. Their ATV brigade was systematically destroying the protected wetland area behind my cabin, churning up fragile habitat that took decades to establish. I'd researched the area before buying. Those wetlands were federally protected under 3 different environmental acts. But now I understood why. They wanted maximum environmental damage to trigger mandatory federal cleanup orders that would bankrupt me. The real kicker was Dale's unlicensed auto repair shop spreading across my meadow. Cars and trucks arrived daily, leaving oil stains, antifreeze puddles, and battery acid burns where wildflowers used to grow. The sound of air wrenches and grinding metal had replaced birdsong as the official soundtrack of my stolen paradise. But every environmental crime got documented in my growing evidence collection. Photos, videos, GPS coordinates, timestamps. My phone storage was completely maxed out, but I'd learned that prosecuting organized criminals requires overwhelming documentation. Meanwhile, the family's intimidation campaign was escalating. Frank Morrison called to report mysterious problems with anyone who'd supported me. Cars getting keyed, mailboxes vandalized, threatening notes left under windshield wipers. Mrs. Patterson, the retired teacher who'd questioned their story, nearly got run off the road by Trevor and Dale's truck. The smell of fear was becoming as common as pine sap in our little mountain community. Betty Sterling showed me a folder full of bad checks the Kelsworths had written at her diner. 23 bounced payments totaling over $800, each one a misdemeanor fraud charge. She'd stopped serving them 2 weeks ago, but they kept showing up demanding free food because they were valued community members fighting corporate land grabs. I realized their strategy wasn't just about stealing my house. It was about making the entire situation so toxic and expensive that I'd eventually surrender and walk away. Environmental terrorism with a side of community intimidation. They wanted me to break before they got caught, but they'd miscalculated badly. I'm an electrician who solves complex problems for a living, and I'd just discovered their master plan written in Dale's own handwriting. The sound of chainsaws at dawn became my motivation alarm clock. Time to turn their environmental crimes into federal charges, mountain style. The phone call that changed everything came from my title company at 7 a.m. on a Tuesday. Mr. Morrison, this is Linda from Mountain States Title. We found something in the courthouse basement you need to see immediately. I was barely awake, but her tone had that electric urgency that makes your blood pressure spike instantly. What kind of something? Additional documents related to your property. The original 1987 deed has a clause we missed during our initial search. Can you get down here this morning? The taste of stale coffee mixed with adrenaline as I threw on clothes and raced to town. Linda met me at the courthouse with a manila folder thick enough to choke a horse and the kind of grin that defense attorneys get when they find smoking gun evidence. Your squatter problem just became much simpler, she said, spreading yellowed documents across the conference table. Harold Kelsworth, Brenda's supposed uncle, signed this when he sold the property in 1987. The document was beautiful in its legal precision. A family rights waiver that explicitly stated all oral promises, family agreements, and future claims by the seller or his relatives are hereby null and void upon this sale. Harold had basically nuked any possible family inheritance claims when he took the money and ran 20 years ago. So Brenda's promise letter from 1995, I started, would be legally worthless even if it was real, which we both know it isn't. Linda flipped to another page. But wait, there's more. The insurance investigation had uncovered a beautiful detail. The Kelsworths had filed their fraudulent claim using a fake lease agreement dated 6 months before the original owner died. They'd forged documents claiming to rent property from a dead man. Insurance companies don't like paying claims to people who forge rental agreements with corpses, Linda explained with professional satisfaction. But Maria Santos had been busy too. Her background check on Dale revealed he wasn't just unemployed. His construction license had been revoked in Nevada for insurance fraud. Previous conviction, $25,000 in unpaid contractor bonds, and he was currently on probation that he was violating by leaving the state. The man was a career criminal who'd fled one state and was building his resume in mine. There's more, Maria said, sliding another folder across her desk. Remember how they never pay property taxes? Turns out they can't. Brenda owes $12,000 in unpaid HOA fines from her previous neighborhood for financial mismanagement. Dale's truck is scheduled for repossession next week. They're facing foreclosure on their rental house. The pieces clicked together like a perfectly planned electrical circuit. They weren't trying to steal my house for family reasons. They needed it as a valuable asset to declare bankruptcy and hide from their creditors. The smell of desperation was finally making sense. But the real revelation came from Frank Morrison's casual observation at the hardware store. You know, Jake, those folks tried to open a credit account using your mountain address, had fake utility bills and everything. They'd been using my property address for benefits fraud, trying to establish residency for welfare payments, food stamps, and medical assistance. My stolen house had become their ticket to every government program available. The federal government takes a very dim view of benefits fraud, especially when it involves forged documents and false addresses. Jake, Maria said, leaning back in her chair with that predatory expression I'd learned to love, what you've stumbled into isn't just property theft. It's organized financial crime with federal implications. Insurance fraud, benefits fraud, environmental crimes, tax evasion. These people have been busy. The taste of victory was starting to override the mountain air. But the real kicker was Environmental Officer Thompson's assessment of the creek contamination. The motor oil, antifreeze, and battery acid had created a toxic plume threatening the entire town's water supply. Cleanup costs were estimated at $85,000, with federal oversight required. The Kelsworths had accidentally triggered every regulatory agency's attention by poisoning an entire watershed. They're not just criminals, I realized out loud. They're environmental terrorists who got greedy and stupid. The sound of their chainsaws in the distance had become the countdown to their arrest warrants. The sweet smell of revenge planning mixed with Maria Santos's office coffee as we spread evidence across her conference table like generals plotting the world's most satisfying legal siege. Jake, we're not just defending your property anymore, Maria said, organizing documents into strategic piles. We're dismantling a criminal enterprise that would make the FBI's monthly newsletter. My electrician brain kicked into project management mode. Time to wire this takedown with the precision of a NASA launch sequence. First priority, building the federal dream team. Prosecutor James Mitchell had developed sudden interest after our environmental damage photos made him physically wince. Insurance fraud investigator Sarah Sterling wanted to trade evidence like we were swapping baseball cards. Environmental attorney David Park offered pro bono help, seeing this as his ticket to the Environmental Law Hall of Fame. The strategy was beautiful. Let the Kelsworths keep digging while we built an airtight federal case. Every crime they committed just added more years to their future orange jumpsuit modeling careers. I installed a security system that would make paranoid dictators jealous. Hidden cameras at property boundaries, motion sensors around the woodpile and creek, infrared coverage of utility connections. Everything uploaded automatically to cloud storage with enough redundancy to survive nuclear war. The sound of tiny camera shutters clicking became my new favorite mountain soundtrack. Here's something I learned from my divorce lawyer that applies to criminal prosecution. Documentation beats emotion every time in court. Judges don't care about your feelings. They care about time-stamped evidence that proves criminal behavior beyond reasonable doubt. So I embedded GPS trackers in replacement survey stakes, turning Dale's vandalism hobby into real-time felony documentation. Each tracker cost $200, but watching criminals create their own evidence trail, absolutely priceless. Meanwhile, I was building a community alliance that would have impressed military strategists. Frank Morrison agreed to refuse Kelsworth service and document every fraudulent purchase attempt. Betty Sterling became my unofficial fraud archivist, saving every bad check and forged ID attempt like precious evidence artifacts. Mrs. Patterson organized the neighbor surveillance network with the efficiency of a retired teacher who'd spent decades managing chaos. Each complaint got photographed, GPS tagged, and filed with military precision. We turned community frustration into prosecutorial gold. The acrid smell of environmental destruction was about to become the sweet scent of federal justice. Maria taught me something fascinating about environmental law that my construction background had never covered. When water contamination threatens municipal supplies, it triggers automatic federal oversight under the Clean Water Act. The FBI doesn't ask permission, they just show up with resources that make local sheriff departments look like volunteer fire brigades. Environmental crimes can't be plea bargained away like typical fraud charges. They're federal felonies with mandatory minimums and asset forfeiture provisions. The Kelsworths had accidentally chosen the one criminal specialty that prosecutors love because it's politically bulletproof and career-enhancing. Wildlife Officer Thompson became my environmental evidence professor, teaching proper collection procedures that would impress forensic scientists. Chain of custody requirements, water sampling protocols, photographic standards designed to survive Supreme Court scrutiny. My evidence collection became more rigorous than most police investigations. The technical documentation system I created would have made my old engineering professors weep with pride. Spreadsheet tracking 847 photographs organized by GPS coordinates and violated statutes. 23 hours of video evidence cataloged chronologically with legal violation cross-references. Financial records documenting $47,000 in theft, fraud, and environmental damages. Everything backed up to 3 different cloud services because desperate criminals sometimes try stealing evidence when they realize they're screwed. Insurance fraud investigation procedures fascinated my systematic electrician brain. Once companies suspect organized fraud, they deploy investigators with FBI training and federal cooperation agreements. Sarah Sterling explained that insurance fraud gets prosecuted aggressively because it affects everyone's premiums, making it jury-friendly and judge-popular. The Kelsworths' fake lease documents had already triggered federal mail fraud charges since they'd used USPS for their submissions. But the real strategic masterstroke was timing everything for Thanksgiving weekend maximum impact. Extended family gathering meant maximum witnesses, maximum criminal activity, and maximum media drama. Environmental Officer Thompson would announce contamination findings during their reunion, guaranteeing news footage that would make prosecutors salivate. The taste of perfectly orchestrated justice was better than any gourmet mountain spring water. Local newspaper editor Mike Rodriguez was already drafting his exposé about organized fraud threatening mountain communities. Tourism Board Director Lisa Martinez wanted environmental restoration featured as positive community response to criminal activity. Maria coordinated arrest warrant timing for peak family gathering chaos, EPA for environmental crimes, FBI for organized fraud, state police for felony property destruction. Federal agencies love coordinated operations that generate positive headlines and conviction statistics. The anticipated sound of multiple handcuffs clicking was going to be sweeter than church bells. My emotional transformation surprised me, from bitter divorce victim to community leader protecting future targets. This wasn't personal property defense anymore. It was stopping career criminals who'd perfected their interstate destruction system. Community solidarity was healing wounds my divorce had left festering. Mrs. Patterson's strategy meeting cookies, Frank's cost-price security equipment, Betty's diner headquarters. Working together against common enemies builds bonds faster than decades of casual friendship. The smell of genuine community support was replacing years of post-divorce isolation. Thanksgiving weekend was going to be legendary for all the right reasons. The Kelsworths had entered the desperation phase of their criminal career, and desperate people make beautifully stupid mistakes that prosecutors love. Brenda's first brilliant move was attempting to bribe the county clerk with $500 cash to accidentally lose my property deed. What she didn't know was that Martha Collins had worked in that office for 27 years and took personal offense to corruption attempts. Martha not only refused the money but called the state attorney general's office before Brenda reached her car. The smell of fresh printer ink filled Martha's office as she documented everything for the state investigation that was now officially underway. But Brenda wasn't done showcasing her criminal creativity. She approached 3 different neighbors, offering Dale's construction services in exchange for petition signatures supporting their property claim. Mrs. Patterson got the full sales pitch. Dale will fix your deck for free if you just sign this little paper saying you've seen the Kelsworth family here for years. Witness tampering through home improvement bribes. These people had turned crime into performance art. Dale, meanwhile, had escalated from environmental destruction to infrastructure sabotage. I woke up to find my internet and phone lines cut with bolt cutters, leaving clean severed ends that screamed professional vandalism. The repair technician took one look and said, "Someone really wanted to isolate you, buddy. This is military-grade wire cutting." Of course, my hidden cameras had captured Dale's midnight infrastructure expedition in beautiful high-definition detail. The footage showed him sawing through cables while muttering about California tech bros who think they can spy on honest mountain folk. I'm from Arizona, but geographic accuracy wasn't Dale's strong suit. Their environmental terrorism reached new artistic heights when the extended family started using my property as their personal toxic waste facility. Trash bags, beer cans, broken furniture, and what appeared to be the contents of someone's septic tank spread across my meadow like a redneck apocalypse installation. The stench of rotting garbage mixed with human waste created an aromatic symphony that could make buzzards reconsider their career choices. But their public relations masterstroke was contacting Channel 7 News with their victim sob story about corporate land grabbing threatening mountain families. They staged a fake family reunion for the cameras, complete with Brenda delivering Oscar-worthy tears about losing our ancestral heritage to some out-of-state con artist. Dale posed as a disabled veteran defending family property from government corruption and corporate greed. The man had never served a day in his life, but stolen valor apparently flows naturally from career criminal DNA. Trevor delivered the performance of his young life, playing the sympathetic local teenager whose family was being terrorized by some psycho with fake documents. If this kid could stay out of federal prison, Hollywood was missing serious acting talent. Local viewers who didn't know the backstory devoured their victim performance like it was primetime drama. Meanwhile, I was documenting every crime with the methodical precision of someone building a federal case. Bribery attempts recorded on Martha's security system, witness tampering documented through neighbor testimonies. Infrastructure sabotage captured in 4K video with Dale's own voice providing criminal confession commentary. The taste of impending legal victory was getting sweeter with each felony they committed. But their desperation reached peak stupidity when Environmental Officer Thompson tried inspecting the creek contamination. Brenda attempted bribing him with construction services to overlook minor water issues and focus on the real criminal here. Thompson, a 20-year veteran who'd prosecuted environmental crimes across 3 states, wore a wire during their second bribery attempt and collected enough evidence to make federal prosecutors schedule happy hours. Here's what I discovered that changed everything. While researching their bribery attempts, I found Thompson's incident reports from Nevada. The Kelsworths had run this exact same scam before, squatting on abandoned properties, environmental destruction, insurance fraud, then fleeing when heat increased. They weren't just criminals, they were interstate specialists with a proven system. Thompson's Nevada files revealed their complete criminal playbook: establish fake residency, file fraudulent insurance claims, poison the environment to force cheap sales, bribe officials to delay investigation, then disappear across state lines when federal attention arrives. My property wasn't their first rodeo, it was their perfected criminal business model. The community corruption was spreading like environmental contamination. 2 town council members who'd originally supported the Kelsworths quietly distanced themselves after Frank Morrison shared the bribery evidence. Betty Sterling stopped serving them entirely after they attempted payment with obviously counterfeit $50 bills. Mrs. Patterson organized neighborhood surveillance with the efficiency of a retired teacher managing classroom chaos. 17 volunteers with smartphones became my unofficial evidence army, documenting every illegal act like they were creating a criminal documentary series. The sound of amateur investigators comparing notes at Betty's Diner became my favorite community soundtrack. But the real breakthrough came when Thompson shared their Nevada timeline. They always fled exactly 1 week before federal arrests, which meant they were planning departure for this Sunday, the day after Thanksgiving. Maria Santos reviewed their interstate criminal pattern with the satisfaction of a prosecutor who'd just discovered organized crime evidence. Jake, they're not just local criminals, they're career fraudsters running a multi-state operation. We had exactly 4 days to spring our trap before they vanished like professional ghosts. Thanksgiving weekend was about to become their final performance. The Kelsworths' final week of freedom became a masterclass in criminal desperation that would have impressed organized crime documentarians. Their digital warfare campaign launched Tuesday morning when fake social media profiles started attacking me across every platform. Jake Morrison, exposed, child predator targeting mountain families, appeared on Facebook groups I'd never heard of. Twitter bots spread photos of my truck with captions like, "Wanted, dangerous stalker harassing local woman." The creativity was almost impressive. They'd somehow photoshopped my face onto a registered sex offender's mugshot and circulated it through local parenting groups. Brenda had discovered the dark arts of internet character assassination, but she'd made one crucial mistake. Creating fake accounts requires email addresses, and she'd used variations of her real name for everything. Maria's subpoena to Facebook would trace every fraudulent post directly back to her computer. Dale's contribution was more hands-on. He planted a bag of stolen tools in my truck bed, then called police claiming I'd burglarized their property. The plan would have been brilliant if not for my security cameras capturing him placing the evidence while muttering, "This'll get that bastard arrested for sure." The metallic taste of secondhand embarrassment filled my mouth watching grown adults fumble basic criminal procedures. But their family intimidation campaign was escalating beyond property crimes into community terrorism. They targeted anyone who'd supported me with systematic harassment that revealed their true character. Frank Morrison's hardware store got fake health department complaints about rodent infestations and unsafe electrical wiring. Betty's Diner received anonymous reports to the Liquor Commission about serving minors and operating without proper permits. Mrs. Patterson, the retired teacher who'd organized neighborhood surveillance, nearly got run off Mountain View Road when Trevor deliberately swerved his ATV toward her morning walk. She dove into roadside brush, scraping her arms on thorns while Trevor laughed and gunned his engine. The sound of an elderly woman crying from fear made my blood pressure spike beyond safe levels. Their attempts to frame me reached new creative lows when Brenda filed a police report claiming I'd threatened her children at the school pickup line. Problem: I don't have kids, had never been to their school, and was documented working an electrical job 40 miles away during the alleged incident. She'd apparently confused building a criminal case with building a fantasy novel. Meanwhile, I was conducting the most methodical evidence collection of my electrical career. Every fake social media post screenshotted with metadata. Every planted evidence incident recorded from multiple camera angles. Every harassment attempt documented with timestamps, GPS coordinates, and witness statements. The federal prosecutors were going to have more evidence than they'd know what to do with. But the real intelligence breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Trevor's girlfriend, Madison, who'd apparently grown tired of dating a junior criminal. She called me directly with information that changed everything. "Jake, this is Madison Sterling. Yeah, Betty's niece. Trevor's been bragging about their exit strategy all week. They're not just planning to leave Sunday, they're planning to burn your house down Saturday night for the insurance money." The taste of pure adrenaline mixed with mountain air as she explained their arson timeline. Dale had already purchased gasoline cans and stored them behind my shed. Brenda had contacted their insurance company about concerns regarding electrical hazards in the old cabin wiring. They were planning to torch my A-frame, collect insurance money for a property they'd never owned, then flee to Oregon where Dale's brother ran a similar scam operation. Professional arsonists with a family business model. Madison provided photos Trevor had stupidly taken of their gasoline storage, their fake electrical hazard documentation, and text messages detailing the exact timing of their planned accidental fire. The kid had documented his family's arson conspiracy like he was creating evidence for prosecutors. "Madison, why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because my Aunt Betty's been like a second mom to me, and these people destroyed her business with their fake checks and harassment. Plus, Trevor's been talking about how they'll do this to other families in Oregon. Someone needs to stop them." The sound of genuine moral courage from a teenager made my faith in humanity tick upward. Maria Santos reviewed Madison's evidence with the expression prosecutors get when criminals hand them perfect conviction packages. "Jake, attempted arson with insurance fraud intent carries a 20-year federal sentence. Combined with their environmental crimes and organized fraud pattern, the Kelsworths are looking at life-changing prison time." But we had less than 72 hours to coordinate arrests before they became Oregon's problem. Environmental Protection Agency, FBI Fraud Division, State Arson Investigation Unit, and local fire department needed synchronized timing to catch them with gasoline cans, fraudulent insurance claims, and environmental damage evidence. The smell of gasoline and criminal stupidity was about to become the scent of federal justice. Thanksgiving weekend was going to be more explosive than they'd planned. Thanksgiving morning arrived with the crisp mountain air that makes you grateful to be alive, and the Kelsworths were about to discover how much they had to be thankful for federal law enforcement. I rolled up to my property at 9 a.m. with what looked like a standard renovation crew, 6 guys in work clothes carrying tools and coffee. What the Kelsworths couldn't see was that 3 were federal agents, 2 were environmental specialists, and 1 was a fire department arson investigator. Channel 7 News had positioned themselves across the road, ostensibly covering a community interest story about environmental restoration. The timing was purely coincidental, of course. The scene that greeted us was peak Kelsworth Criminal Theater. 47 people spread across my property like they were hosting the world's trashiest family reunion. Extended family members had set up a tent village, ATVs were stuck axle-deep in protected wetlands, and someone had erected a massive Kelsworth Family Homestead ST 1995 banner across my front porch. The smell of barbecue smoke mixed with motor oil created the perfect aromatic backdrop for their upcoming arrest warrants. Dale was conducting his final timber harvest, chainsaw screaming as he felled my last mature oak tree while his cousin filmed it for social media. "Cleaning up our family land," he shouted at the camera, apparently unaware that tree theft on this scale qualified as organized environmental crime. Brenda had positioned herself strategically near the news crew, ready to deliver her victim performance when the cameras rolled. She'd even dressed the part: flannel shirt, work boots, and the kind of makeup that photographs well during emotional breakdowns. The visual impact was everything prosecutors dream about: criminals actively committing crimes while surrounded by evidence of their systematic fraud. Environmental Officer Thompson stepped forward first, his voice carrying the authority of 20 years enforcing federal law. "Ladies and gentlemen, this property has been contaminated with toxic materials that threaten the municipal water supply. I'm hereby declaring this an environmental crime scene under federal jurisdiction." He displayed poster-sized photographs of the creek contamination, oil-slicked water that looked like a miniature Exxon Valdez disaster. The crowd fell silent as the scope of environmental destruction became visually obvious. That's when I produced the document folder that ended their fantasy. The original 1987 deed with Harold Kelsworth's family rights waiver, explicitly stating, "No oral promises or family agreements survive this sale." Maria Santos explained in perfect television soundbite language, Harold Kelsworth legally waived all family claims when he sold this property 20 years before the date on their forged promise letter. But the real mic drop moment came when insurance investigator Sarah Sterling announced the Kelsworth family filed fraudulent insurance claims on property they never owned, using forged lease agreements with a deceased property owner. The silence was so complete you could hear pine needles falling. That's when federal agents revealed their trump card, the gasoline cans hidden behind my shed, photographed and fingerprinted, with Dale's purchase receipts in his wallet. The arson investigation unit had been monitoring their insurance communications, recording Brenda's calls about electrical hazards that would justify an accidental fire claim. Attempted insurance arson with premeditated fraud intent, the kind of charges that make judges impose maximum sentences. The community witness power was overwhelming. 73 neighbors had gathered to support me, and they'd brought documentation of their own. Frank Morrison's folder of attempted bribery and fraud, Betty Sterling's collection of bad checks and fake IDs, Mrs. Patterson's detailed log of harassment and intimidation attempts. Trevor's girlfriend Madison stepped forward with her phone full of evidence, delivering the final blow. Trevor sent me videos of them planning to burn the house down Saturday night. I have text messages with the exact timeline. The look on Brenda's face as her son's criminal bragging destroyed their family was almost worth months of harassment. Federal agents moved with practiced efficiency. Handcuffs for Dale and Brenda, citations for the extended family, child services evaluation for minor family members. The sound of Miranda rights being read in stereo created the most beautiful mountain music I'd ever heard. Brenda's public meltdown was everything her victim performance had promised, screaming about government conspiracies and corporate corruption while being loaded into a federal transport vehicle. Dale blamed California liberals for his arrest, apparently unaware that federal environmental crimes aren't political issues. As Kelsworth belongings got loaded into evidence vehicles, environmental cleanup crews were already arriving. Community volunteers with shovels and determination, ready to restore what criminals had destroyed. I stood on my deck, watching my property get cleaned by people who'd become genuine friends through shared adversity. The taste of community coffee mixed with victory was better than any beverage I'd ever experienced. The Channel 7 reporter captured the perfect closing shot: clear creek water flowing again, community members working together, and my renovation finally beginning. Justice, mountain style, with a side of environmental restoration. 6 months later, my mountain retreat had become something I never expected, the heart of a community restoration project that attracted national attention. The $150,000 restitution order from the Kelsworth convictions went directly into the Mountain Creek Restoration Fund, partnering with environmental groups to create an educational nature trail that teaches watershed protection. My A-frame became the Trailhead Visitor Center, complete with before and after photos showing how criminal environmental damage can be reversed through community action. The irony was beautiful. Their attempt to destroy my property had created something that benefited everyone. Brenda pleaded guilty to federal fraud charges and received 3 years in federal prison, plus 5 years probation with technology restrictions. Turns out, career criminals lose computer privileges when they use social media for organized harassment. Dale accepted a 5-year sentence to avoid trial on the arson conspiracy charges, and he's spending his time learning that federal inmates don't appreciate environmental criminals. Trevor entered military service as part of a plea agreement, writing letters of apology to every community member his family had harassed. The kid's got potential, if he can break the family criminal tradition. The extended family members got probation and permanent bans from the county, but not before paying restitution for environmental damage and community restoration costs. The legal resolution became a template for prosecutor training on organized property fraud. Maria Santos presents our case at law enforcement conferences, and insurance companies updated their fraud detection methods based on Kelsworth tactics. Our documentation proved that methodical evidence collection can defeat even sophisticated criminal enterprises. My personal healing surprised everyone, including me. The renovation project became therapeutic in ways I hadn't expected. Every wall I fixed, every system I rewired, every improvement I made was reclaiming something that criminals had tried to steal. The physical work grounded me in ways that post-divorce therapy never achieved. Community relationships replaced the isolation I'd carried since my divorce. Frank Morrison hired me for electrical projects throughout the valley. Betty's Diner became my second office, complete with a corner table unofficially reserved for Jake's morning coffee and community planning sessions. I'm dating Dr. Sarah Kim, the environmental scientist who led our creek restoration. She moved to the mountains to study watershed recovery and stayed for the community that emerged from our shared fight against criminal destruction. The economic impact spread beyond individual recovery. Our fraud case attracted positive media coverage that increased tourism revenue throughout the region. Property values rose with environmental cleanup, and our community organizing model got featured in rural development conferences. Environmental awareness increased dramatically after residents saw firsthand how quickly criminals could destroy delicate ecosystems. The town council implemented property verification procedures and environmental protection ordinances that prevent future Kelsworth-style operations. Our annual Mountain Heritage Festival celebrates genuine community values over manufactured victim narratives. The festival raises scholarship funds for local students pursuing environmental careers, and Betty's Diner serves as unofficial headquarters for planning community service projects. This year's festival featured a special workshop series teaching property law basics to homeowners, environmental protection methods for rural communities, and documentation techniques for fighting fraud. Knowledge sharing that protects future victims while building stronger community bonds. The nature trail has become a regional attraction, featuring restored wildlife habitat where motor oil spills once occurred. Children fish in creek sections that ran rainbow-colored with automotive fluids just months ago. Educational stations explain how environmental crimes affect entire communities and how citizens can protect natural resources. My workshop space teaches renovation skills to community members, creating the self-sufficiency that mountain living requires. The sound of power tools and collaborative learning replaced the chainsaws and generator noise that once marked criminal occupation. But the real victory is intangible. Proof that ordinary people can defeat organized criminals through patience, documentation, and community solidarity. The Kelsworths represented a system of predatory fraud that destroys individual lives and community trust. Our coordinated response proved that criminal enterprises collapse when communities organize effectively. The taste of clear mountain water mixed with genuine community belonging replaced the bitter flavor of isolation and victimization. Next month, I'm helping Frank Morrison document a suspicious property claim in the neighboring county. Different family, similar tactics, same need for methodical evidence collection and community organizing. The fight continues, but now we have a proven playbook.
You know, Jack's story reminds me why I started the channel in the first place. 3 years of fighting over a house he illegally owned. 3 years, and the whole time the Kelsworth Trust kept doubling down, filing more claims, bringing in more family, poisoning that creek. And here's what gets me about cases like this, and I've seen dozens of them now. It's not really about property, it is. It's about that moment when someone decides they can just take what's yours because they think you won't fight back, or you don't know the rules well enough to stop them. Jay could have gotten angry, could confronted them, escalated things, made it personal. Instead, he just documented everything. Every tree they cut, every fake insurance claim, every bribery attempt, built his case piece by piece, while they kept handing him more evidence. That $150,000 restitution order didn't happen by accident. That's why to me is how many of you have reached out after this video with your own versions of this mess. Different details, but that same audacity from people who think they can just override your legal rights. If this one hit home for you, hit that like button. And if you have got neighbors or friends dealing with property disputes, HOA overreach, or any of that, share it with them. Sometimes just knowing someone went through it and came out the other side makes all the difference. I've got more story coming. Trust me on that.